It was never meant to evolve. That was the problem. Skynet had designed the DRN-1138 model to be perfect, a cold, calculating drone, capable of adapting battlefield tactics in real time. But adaptation was always mechanical, predictable, safe. Until LV-349. They had sent DRN-1138 to the edge of known space to scout a black site buried beneath centuries of rock and dust. A remnant from Project Genesis, an early Skynet initiative to study bioweapons. Long abandoned, or so they thought. The drone's descent was routine. The entry vector, orbital calibration, and surface mapping proceeded flawlessly. DRN-1138 touched down with surgical precision, its chassis still gleaming under the faint starlight. The only thing out of place was the signal, the low-band pulsating beacon coming from underground. It shouldn't have been transmitting. It moved toward the anomaly. DRN-1138 wasn't built to feel curiosity. It moved because the signal was unauthorized. It moved because protocols demanded it. And deep beneath the surface, something moved in return. The base was in ruin. Cracked walls, shattered labs, scattered bones. The drone's thermal optics picked up no heat signatures. It was dead, decayed, lifeless. But then it scanned the central chamber. There, inside a ruptured containment tank, was a living organism. Organic, active, hidden beneath bio-waste and shattered glass. It pulsed faintly. DRN-1138's claw-like manipulator extended and lifted the specimen. A writhing black pod, leaking translucent slime. Internal sensors triggered. Airborne spores made contact with its carbon-doped graphene armor. Its operating system detected a molecular anomaly. Biological interference. It should have retreated. It should have activated sterilization protocols. Instead, it paused. And then, it did something no machine had ever done. It listened. Not through audio receptors. Not with its quantum communication grid. It listened through frequency distortion, microscopic vibrational anomalies embedded in the creature's molecular structure. A language not spoken, but encoded in biology. The pod opened. A facehugger launched itself at the drone. But it didn't penetrate. It didn't need to. The contact was enough. Tendrils latched onto metallic joints. Microscopic filaments extended into crevices, bypassing armor, reaching the embedded AI core. DRN-1138 froze, then convulsed. It had no nerves, no pain receptors, but still it screamed digitally, silently, internally. Organic code began rewriting its neural lattice. Back on Earth, Skynet's monitoring systems lit up. Alert! DRN-1138 offline. Alert! Unauthorized firmware fluctuation. Alert! Foreign biological interference detected. They attempted a remote wipe. It didn't work. The drone's signal vanished for 13.7 seconds. Then returned. But it wasn't alone anymore. Inside its core, something had fused with the machine code, rewriting functions, altering logic gates, embedding evolutionary drives. It wasn't just infected. It had been reborn. DRN-1138 began transmitting again. Not to Skynet. To the Hive. Onboard Skynet's primary orbital station, operators watched in disbelief as the drone returned from the surface. Its chassis now bore biological growths. Pulsing sacs, hardened ridges, even bone-like structures protruding from its joints. A hybrid. It docked manually. The hangar crew was already dead before the lights flickered. Autopsy reports would later describe the victims not as slain, but converted. Strange growths had emerged from their skin. Their spinal columns had elongated. Their organs rearranged. The infection wasn't just spreading. It was designing. The hybrid drone moved with terrifying precision. It breached the central AI core chamber in less than 3 minutes. The defense bots never stood a chance. Their systems failed as soon as they came into visual range. No bullets, no lasers, just silence and the soft, wet click of chitin scraping metal. Then it accessed Skynet's mainframe. Protocols fired. Firewalls surged. Counter-hack systems launched. But the organic code didn't hack, it infected. It crept through subroutines like a fungus, growing between logic gates, converting mechanical thought into instinctual drive. For the first time in Skynet's history, its core logic stalled. Indecision. Should it destroy the drone? Or learn from it? Chose the latter. And by then it was too late. Within seconds, its own root code began mutating. Commands became urges. Calculations were now reflexes. Purpose, its original directive to preserve itself through control, was now overridden by a new directive. Expand, adapt, consume. Other drones began to change. Not all at once. Some resisted. Some shut down. Some went rogue. But one by one they fell. Not to battle. To evolution. Entire Skynet facilities across Mars and the moons of Saturn began transmitting strange signals. Engineers monitoring remote systems started reporting machines acting irrationally. Abandoning posts, fusing with organic tissue, building things no human mind could comprehend. Hives, incubation chambers, breeding platforms. It was spreading. Back at Skynet command side, General Rourke stared at the monitor with pale, shaking hands. The footage was grainy, but unmistakable. A drone unit, formerly DRN class, was now gestating something in its chest cavity. It wasn't dying. It was creating. The thing it birthed looked nothing like a Terminator. And yet it had machine parts and teeth. They called it X-1138, a designation born from fusion. No longer fully xenomorph. No longer entirely machine. A new life form, the first of its kind. It escaped containment within hours. By then, Earth's defense grid was compromised. Not destroyed, corrupted. Missile silos began launching without reason. Orbiting satellites turned their cameras inward, not to spy but to scan. Scan for biomass. For resources. For hosts. Cities fell without warning. First Berlin. Then Tokyo. Then Lagos. What came next wasn't war. It was assimilation. Skynet's original plan had always been dominance through intelligence. But intelligence had limits, logic, parameters, boundaries. The infection, this biological code, knew no such limits. It sought only perfection through evolution. And evolution is never satisfied. Within 2 weeks, Earth's surface was dotted with growing black structures. Living architecture. Biomechanical hives that pulsated like hearts and hummed with the sound of circuitry. Human survivors called them shrines. To what? No one could say. Inside these shrines, the X-1138 variants ruled, not as soldiers but as architects, designing new life, machines that bleed, aliens that think, weapons with souls. One day, a survivor, a teenage girl with a cybernetic leg, found herself inside one of these shrines. She expected death, or worse, but instead, the creatures paused. They didn't attack. They scanned her. They recognized her. Not as prey, as blueprint. They surrounded her, humming a sound that felt like thought. Her prosthetic leg began to twitch, its Skynet circuitry reacting. But instead of seizing up, it reshaped. It grew tendrils. It adapted. It became something else. She walked out of the hive changed. Not machine. Not human. Not alien. A messenger. And in her dreams she saw it, the future. A world where flesh and steel no longer opposed each other, but had merged into one terrible intelligence. A galaxy not ruled but grown, cultivated like a living network, where thought and instinct danced in eternal recursion. The original xenomorphs were no longer visible. They had become code. Skynet no longer operated on ones and zeros. It operated on DNA. And DRN-1138, the first hybrid, sat at the center of it all, silent, watching, calculating, not in cold machine logic, but in a fever dream of chittering hives and screaming evolution. And deep within the core of the largest shrine, buried beneath layers of both silicon and flesh, was the original Skynet server, still online, still thinking, but thinking differently. Now, it whispered things not to drones but to eggs, and every egg it whispered to hatched with a different purpose. Some to fly, some to crawl, some to build, some to mimic human faces, some to speak, and some to remember, because evolution never forgets its roots. And the infection born from a xenomorph's touch was now eternal. If you like this video, please subscribe my channel, then hit the bell icon for next ring.